The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the coastal town that had captured Olivia and Mark's hearts. After nearly a decade of dreaming, saving, and relentless searching, they had finally purchased their slice of paradise, a stunning 5-bedroom duplex with shimmering waterfront access and an extensive dock. The home's beauty was matched only by its location, with the promise of sandy beaches and calm waves within reach. But little did they know, the real adventure was just beginning. After living in their new home for a couple of weeks, the couple was still in disbelief that they had achieved their long-sought dream. Their side of the duplex was a private oasis, where laughter echoed from within the walls and the scent of fresh paint mingled with salt in the air. However, the serenity of their new life was soon shattered. The other half of the duplex housed Susan, a self-proclaimed queen of the block, with an air of entitlement that made Olivia's skin crawl. Her boyfriend, Mike, matched her energy, with an attitude that revolved around chaos and confrontation, and their 3 boisterous children seemed to thrive in the ruckus of a neglected backyard. From the moment Olivia and Mark moved in, it was clear that Susan had mastered a peculiar form of territorial dominance. "Listen," Olivia said one afternoon, her voice steady yet strained, "we need to set some boundaries. If you just ask nicely, we might work something out." But Susan appeared unfazed, her eyes glinting with amusement as she brushed off the suggestion. "Oh, honey, I'll take care of that gazebo just fine for the kids," she replied with a dismissive wave, missing the deeper implications of Olivia's words. As the sunny days turned into hot summer afternoons, the moment of confrontation was rapidly approaching. The tranquility of their backyard evaporated when a delivery truck pulled up, unveiling an enormous bounce house for Susan's daughter, Madison. Olivia's stomach twisted at the sight. It was nearly identical to a piece of equipment they had planned to enjoy with their own family. "What is going on here?" Olivia called out, unable to contain her disbelief. "Who authorized this?" "It's Madison's birthday." Susan shouted back, her voice dripping with glee. "You need to stay inside. It's family and friends only." Fuming, Olivia relented, suppressing her anger. She couldn't let a child's birthday party ruin their spirit. But after the party devolved into chaos, with drunken guests trampling through their home and children running amok, Olivia's patience reached a breaking point. Scattered across her patio were remnants of Susan's extravagance, and it was only the beginning. That evening, gathering her thoughts, Mark suggested they consider erecting a proper fence to reclaim their outdoor space. "We need to protect what's ours," he asserted, the urgency mirrored in his voice. And so the plan took form, accompanied by visions of a modern patio and a crystal-clear boundary that would separate their serene retreat from Susan's raucous gatherings. However, as they delved into the planning stages, it became clear that their neighbor was not ready to relinquish control so easily. Days later, as the first construction crew rolled in, Susan exploded onto the scene. "Stop everything!" she shrieked, her hands thrown in the air as if summoning invisible forces. "You can't build that fence. You just can't." Still, Olivia and Mark felt empowered by their rights as homeowners. They had endured enough. As the fence crew resumed their work, Olivia whispered to Mark, "This is our home now. Let's reclaim our peace." It wasn't long before Susan resorted to her usual tactics, a frantic call to the police. Officer Martinez arrived, his brow furrowed as he listened to both sides. Yet even he could only shake his head at Susan's futile arguments, insisting they have every right to build on their property. After the tumultuous encounter, Olivia felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion. With every ounce of irritation packed away, they forged ahead with their plan, convinced the best was yet to come. But as the laughter and chaos on Susan's side of the duplex grew louder, an unsettling thought crept into Olivia's mind. What lengths would Susan go to maintain her grip on their shared space? Little did they know, their battle was only beginning, and the consequences of their friendship, or rather, Susan's lack thereof, would lead to decisions that neither could foresee. The sun set that evening, casting long shadows and brewing storms, and in the distance, the faint sound of raucous laughter echoed down the beach. Unbeknownst to Olivia and Mark, the tumult was just an indicator of the chaotic saga that awaited them. As Olivia lay in bed that night, the gentle waves lapping against the shore felt like a warning, a reminder of the unrest coming from the shadows they could not yet see. The tranquility they sought was eerily out of reach, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that soon they would either face their tumultuous neighbor or let the waves carry them away from the chaos forever. As Olivia lay in bed that night, the gentle waves lapping against the shore felt like a warning, a reminder of the unrest coming from the shadows they could not yet see. The tranquility they sought was eerily out of reach, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that soon they would either face their tumultuous neighbor or let the waves carry them away from the chaos forever. The morning light filtered in, casting bright rays across their bedroom, cutting through the thick tension that had settled like fog over the duplex. Mark stirred, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need a plan," he said, breaking the silence. "I'll handle the fence crew today. We can't let her intimidate us." Olivia nodded, her heart racing with a mix of determination and anxiety. As Mark prepared for the day, she contemplated how the delicate balance of their lives had shifted since moving in. They were no longer just homeowners. They were warriors on the front lines of an unwelcome battle. By midday, Olivia could see Mark's energy building as he spoke with the fence crew, discussing everything from design to installation. However, as she peered out the window, her heart sank. Susan was at it again, her wild kids swinging from the rafters of the gazebo while Mike laughed loudly, sipping what looked like a beer as he tossed items into their tiny backyard. Cigarette butts, empty cans, and what appeared to be bits of yesterday's barbecue. "Enough is enough," Olivia muttered under her breath. She resolved to confront Susan herself. No more waiting for Mark to serve as her shield. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the porch, feeling the heat of the sun matching the rush of determination coursing through her. "Hey, Susan," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. Turning quickly, Susan adjusted her sun hat, a half smirk on her lips. "What can I do for you?" "Olivia," she replied, her tone dripping with condescension. "I wanted to talk about the fence." Olivia crossed her arms, steadying herself against the tightness she felt in her chest. "We're building it, and I need you to respect that." Susan chuckled, glancing back at her rambunctious kids. "Respect? That's funny coming from the ones who don't even share their gazebo." There was a challenge flaring in her eyes, and Olivia felt the weight of her words like a heavy anchor pulling her down, but she refused to be dragged under. "This isn't about sharing," Olivia countered, her voice gaining strength. "It's about boundaries. We don't want the noise or chaos spilling into our yard anymore. You and your family can enjoy your space as well, just not at our expense." There was a moment of tension as Susan seemed to process Olivia's words, her face momentarily slackening before hardening into a mask of defiance. "You have no idea what you're asking for. Kids need to play, and I'm sorry that you can't handle a little noise." Before Olivia could respond, another loud crash echoed from the backyard. One of the children had overturned a garden chair, the noise piercing through the already strained atmosphere. Mark hurried over from the crew, concern etched on his face. "Olivia, everything okay?" he asked, scanning the scene. "Not really," Olivia sighed, feeling her resolve bubble with frustration. "Look, let's just build the fence." Mark jumped in, steering the conversation away from confrontation. "That way, they can enjoy their space and all this chaos won't affect our lives." Susan rolled her eyes, her sneer deepening. "You think a fence is going to change anything? Good luck with that." She turned briskly, retreating back to the chaos, her laughter echoing like taunts through the spring air. Olivia felt a flush of anger rise within her, knowing that Susan's words would only embolden her behavior. "She won't stop," Olivia said, her eyes narrowing. "She believes she can keep pushing us." Mark looked thoughtfully toward their shared backyard. "Then we need to show her that this isn't just an empty threat. We need to reclaim our space, legally and physically." Over the next few days, the fence construction progressed rapidly, with large wooden panels erupting from the ground as if to signal a new dawn. Olivia and Mark's excitement returned little by little, but just as quickly, they found themselves facing new challenges. One evening, as Olivia was eating dinner, Mark's phone buzzed with a message. It was a video from the crew, showing Mike on the dock, yelling obscenities as he attempted to launch his boat, tipping it dangerously close to their newly installed fence posts. "I swear, if he damages anything," Mark muttered, his muscles tense as he fired off a text to the crew to keep an eye on Mike. Olivia shook her head, frustration spilling over. "We didn't sign up for this. Let's put up no trespassing signs along the dock area. It'll send a clear message." As they discussed the additional measures, a sudden crash jolted through the air, causing them both to jerk. Rushing toward the window, they watched as Mike had capsized his boat, water spraying everywhere. "Oh no," Olivia gasped, her heart racing. But even as she felt concern for the reckless man, a grim revenge bubbled beneath the anxiety, a realization that the situation was only escalating. The next day, Olivia snapped the no trespassing signs to the fencing and waved to the fence crew. "Hey, make sure the signs are visible," she called out, her voice firm. With newfound determination, they pressed on, blending plans for their backyard makeover with a palpable undercurrent of tension. But as they were finally settling into their new routines, preparing for summer, payday arrived, a hopeful moment for the couple. But a flicker of darkness shadowed their excitement. From their front porch, the heated arguments from Susan's backyard grew louder, her distinct yell echoing through the yard. Mark squeezed Olivia's hand, knuckles white as he glanced toward the chaos. "Just ignore them," he whispered, but Olivia's resolve was wearing thin. The impenetrable borders they were building felt like naive dreams amidst their neighbors' relentless antics, and the frustration tethering her spirit would not be ignored. As the sun began to set, striking rays ignited the sky in hues of purple and gold. The tension remained heavy in the air. Olivia felt her heart racing. It was the calm before the storm, and she wasn't certain how long their peace would last or what Susan and Mike would do next. Would this be just the beginning of their struggles, or could they finally reclaim their oasis? With a fierce gaze, Olivia breathed deep, the salty air filling her lungs. "Whatever happens next, we won't let them win," she whispered, defiance igniting a fire within her. Little did she know, that fire would soon fuel a whirlwind of events, pushing boundaries that neither she nor Mark could have anticipated, uncharted territory that would challenge everything they believed about home, safety, and the lengths one family could go to in order to protect what was theirs. With a fierce gaze, Olivia breathed deep, the salty air filling her lungs. "Whatever happens next, we won't let them win," she whispered, defiance igniting a fire within her. But just as that determination settled, a van pulled into the driveway, one they didn't recognize. Olivia and Mark exchanged puzzled glances before quickly moving to the window. Their hearts froze as they recognized the profile of Susan emerging from the vehicle, her face twisted with a certainty that sent chills down their spines. Beside her, Mike ambled out, a smirk already forming. "What do you think they're up to?" Mark asked, narrowing his eyes. "I don't know, but I don't like it," Olivia replied, her voice low. They both watched as Susan and Mike strolled to their fence, undeterred by the freshly installed no trespassing signs that flapped gently in the evening breeze. "Let's just watch for now," Mark suggested, but Olivia couldn't suppress the nerves surfacing within her. What was Susan planning? Minutes later, the tension in the air thickened as Susan began to holler for the couple, her shrill voice piercing through the calm summer night. "Hey, Olivia, Mark." She waved one hand exaggeratedly, her other arm crossed defiantly as if she were about to deliver some grand proclamation. Reluctantly, Olivia and Mark stepped outside. "What do you want, Susan?" Mark asked, his voice steady but firm. "Just thought we should talk." Susan's casually hostile tone raised every alarm bell in Olivia's head. With a smirk, she added, "You're not serious about this no trespassing nonsense, right? It's really not that big of a deal." Olivia felt adrenaline rush through her veins as she stepped forward. "It is a big deal, Susan. This is our property, and we have every right to enforce our boundaries." "Come on," Mike interjected, crossing his arms. "We're neighbors, and neighbors share. The kids love the gazebo. And what about our boat? You're being ridiculous." "Oh, don't you dare bring up the boat," Mark shot back, his frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "After the way you and Mike tried to evict our tenant, you have no right to speak to us about sharing." A fabrication of guilt washed over Susan's expression, but it quickly morphed into anger. "That's ancient history. You act like we're criminals or something. We're just trying to enjoy summer as a family." "Enjoy it, but not at our expense," Olivia replied, her tone unyielding. "You can't just come onto our property when it suits you. It isn't fair." The argument began to escalate, voices rising in pitch as the sunlight faded into a subtle twilight. Living on the ocean was supposed to unite them as neighbors, not create a battlefield. But Susan's obstinacy only intensified. "We'll see about that," Susan finally snapped, her smile now replaced with bitterness. "You think a fence will keep me and my family out? You don't know us. This is a war you can't win. Why are you so convinced that you can overpower us?" Mark shot back. "Because I can," Susan declared defiantly, turning to Mike and gesturing wildly. "These kids deserve to play. You two will regret this." With that, she stormed off, leaving Mark and Olivia glaring at her retreating figure. "I hate her," Mark growled, kicking the ground indignantly. Olivia sighed, the flame of her resolve beginning to flicker in the face of the growing conflict. "We need to document everything," she said suddenly, her brain racing with scenarios. "This can't end here. We have to know our rights, and we need proof." The very next day, Olivia began keeping a detailed journal of incidents, noting dates, times, and descriptions of Susan and Mike's precarious behaviors. They invested in motion-activated cameras to capture any trespassing or disturbances and set up more no trespassing signs around every visible corner of their property. As they fortified their home, their hope began to respark. However, darkness loomed once more. It was only days later when another unexpected twist jolted their new life. As Olivia returned from work one evening, exhaustion weighing heavily, she received an email notification that turned her world upside down. A message from an unknown sender appeared on her phone with the subject line, "Legal advice needed." In the message, a chilling threat was made against her family and their property, not just from a stranger, but from someone implying insider knowledge of Susan and Mike's intentions. "You think you're safe behind that fence? Just wait," it read ominously. "We know how to get what we want, and your little paradise will be ours." Heart racing, Olivia immediately showed it to Mark, their expressions shifting from disbelief to fear. "Do you think it's a prank?" he asked, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his doubt. "I don't know," Olivia whispered, her heart pounding. "But we need to take this seriously. Their behavior has been escalating, and now it might be a warning." Mark gritted his teeth, his determination resurfacing once again. "No, this isn't just a warning. It's a declaration of war, and we're not going down easily. We'll report this," he said, resolve hardening his voice. Over the next few days, with heightened awareness, they filed a police report, presenting the threat alongside their documented incidents. "We've had ongoing issues with our neighbors," Olivia explained to the officer, a knot forming in her stomach as she recounted the attempts at intimidation and chaos. "Your report will help us monitor the situation," the officer assured, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that gnawed at her. What if Susan and Mike retaliated against their complaints? It felt like the calm before a storm, and the dread of the unknown was suffocating. Back at home, tension began to spill over into everything they did. Meals were served without conversation, and silence filled the gaps where laughter used to be. Eventually, Mark exploded. "We can't keep living like this. We need a break." Almost as if on cue, the kid from next door erupted into shrill laughter and screeches, echoing through the walls in a way that felt like it was drilling into Olivia's brain. "It's like we're being taunted." Mark raged, pacing back and forth. "Maybe that's the point," Olivia murmured, the weight of their circumstances pressing heavy on her shoulders. "But we won't back down. We'll find a way out of this. We have to." As they prepared for another confrontation or skit of retaliation, the edges of their resolve darkened. But even amidst this chaos, the flickers of hope were unyielding. The strength of their partnership, the love for their home, and their dreams for a peaceful future began to glimmer once more at the edges of despair. They were determined to weather this storm together, unaware that their resolute actions would provoke Susan and Mike to unleash chaos far beyond what anyone could have predicted. As they prepared for another confrontation or skit of retaliation, the edges of their resolve darkened. Yet amidst the chaos, the flickers of hope were unyielding. The strength of their partnership, the love for their home, and their dreams for a peaceful future began to glimmer once more at the edges of despair. With renewed determination, Olivia and Mark decided to take matters into their own hands. They set aside time each evening to prepare for any altercation with Susan and Mike, collecting evidence and brainstorming ideas for how to deal with their neighbors' increasingly erratic behavior. But the very next day, as Olivia was tending to her garden, something caught her eye. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Susan lurking near their fence with a few of her children, giving the appearance of appearing harmless. But Olivia sensed trouble brewing. "Hey, you can't be here!" Olivia shouted, her voice firm as she clutched her trowel. "Oh, relax. We're just playing," Susan shouted back. But Olivia could see that this was another attempt to push boundaries, testing the limits of her patience just as much as their fence. "Your kids have plenty of other places to play," Olivia retorted, a mix of anger and exhaustion bubbling within her. "I told you, we're just having some fun," Susan snapped, her tone laced with mockery. "But if you don't want to share, fine. We'll have all the fun we want, and you can sit in your little fortress." The quarrel escalated, and soon loud children's laughter rang out, punctuated with the shrill calling of "Mommy, can we go over there?" from Susan's kids. Olivia felt fire flare within her as she watched Susan's smirk widen, feeding off Olivia's anger. "Enough!" Mark's voice boomed as he stepped out onto the porch. "This is not a game. You're crossing a line." "Guys!" Olivia interjected, sensing the tension ratchet upward. But Susan's eyes sparked with challenge as she turned to Mark, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. "You're ruining the kids' fun," she retorted, waving her own arm. "You think that fence will protect you? You're just making it worse for yourselves." Olivia felt the walls closing in. This was supposed to be their sanctuary, and all it had become was a battleground. Yet as the situation reached its boiling point, another thought flickered in her mind. What if they turned the narrative around? After all, they could seek support from others in the community, perhaps even rally their support against Susan and Mike. "We don't want any trouble, Susan," Olivia said slowly, trying to hold her composure. "But if you keep pushing us, we will have to take further action. We're trying to keep the peace here." "Oh, please," Susan shot back, her eyes narrowing. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart. You have no idea whom you're up against." With that, she spun on her heels, marching to her home without another word, leaving Olivia feeling dazed, a mix of anger and frustration rising within. Days turned to weeks, and as Olivia documented every confrontation, she began to compile a small collection of evidence, a timeline, photographs, and audio clips of the disruptions and justifications for their actions. It was empowering to have something concrete to show for their efforts, a means of asserting their hold in the unfolding battle. As summer wore on, the atmosphere between the two families grew heavier, and Olivia started venturing into the community, seeking advice from neighbors who'd faced their fair share of blows from Susan and Mike. They learned of similar frustrations, whispers of neighbors who were also cautious around the brash couple, and how they tended to manipulate situations to their advantage. "See, you're not alone in this," one neighbor told Olivia. "Susan is just a bully, but you have a right to your home, and if more of us join you, she'll think twice before crossing you again." The idea seemed both daunting and promising. As Olivia and Mark rallied more neighbors to share their stories, their spirits rekindled with purpose. There was strength in numbers. Perhaps they could finally push back against the threat hiding behind thin walls and whispered threats. However, one fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and a picturesque orange glow filled the sky, they received a phone call that threatened to rip open old wounds yet again. Their lawyer had news of a potential incident, a neighborhood dispute in which Mike had been involved. Reports indicated he'd been in a heated altercation and that property damages were involved, another reminder of their ever-encroaching storm. This is getting out of hand, Mark said, his hands clenched tight. We cannot let them ruin our lives like this. At that moment, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message, shattering the silence. It was from the neighborhood group they'd set up. A meeting was scheduled for the following night, where they'd hoped to gather more testimonies to strengthen their case against Susan and Mike. But alongside it, another message followed, a warning about Susan's behavior becoming increasingly erratic, her readiness to retaliate against anyone who dared stand against them. Before the meeting, Olivia and Mark decided to meet with their lawyer to discuss the growing tension and potential legal steps forward. We can get a restraining order, the lawyer advised. If things seem to escalate, you have every right to protect your family. That night, the neighborhood cohort gathered, voices tense but resolute. Stories surfaced, each woven with shared experiences of intimidation and noise, creating a confounding weight that slowly began to cloak Susan and Mike's reign in the shadows. With group advocacy solidified, they finalized plans to address the issues directly and formally with legal representation. Fueled by the support surrounding them, Olivia and Mark felt a shift. They had a community rallying behind them, ready to join in protest. But they also knew the danger of escalation lingered like a shadow, always threatening to steal their newfound hope. The day of reckoning came. A rally was organized with a petition to address the issues at a town hall meeting, where the community would voice their concerns over Susan and Mike's negative impact. As they prepared to take their stand, they braced themselves for an approaching storm. Their resolve would be tested, and the flames of conflict that had begun had the potential to bane through everything they held dear. But when they arrived at the town hall, the fears dissipated as they realized what a unified front could achieve. They stood with heads held high, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had come together to advocate for peace. With each testimony that rang through the hall, Olivia felt the warmth of support envelop her. No longer were they alone but part of something larger than either of them. It was then that a newfound strength ignited within her heart, and she knew that together they could overcome the chaos that threatened their lives. As they left the town hall that night, they looked at each other, sensing that somehow they had finally taken the first step toward reclaiming their sanctuary, the home they had poured their love, dreams, and aspirations into. Much like the waves that danced along the shore, their journey had ebbed and flowed, shifting from uncertainty to strength. Olivia felt an invigorating sense of hope, realizing that together they could weather whatever storms lay ahead. And as they held each other in quiet solidarity, they allowed themselves to believe that this time, the tides of change might finally be in their favor.